California. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about composing your painting, and I've gathered all these objects together on what is currently my easel, the piano, and we're in my living room, so we're using the available space to create home studio just like everyone is doing across the land. And I've gathered together objects in various shapes and colors. This is going to be my stage set, that is a stack of books with a fabric tossed over it, and I'm creating kind of a neutral world. So right off the bat, I'm kind of creating a stage that could become the scene of an amazing drama or something a little bit more pedestrian. But either way, it's really neutral, and this is going to be part of my painting, possibly. The top of the stack, the back of the stack, these three elements are actually playing a really important role in the composing of this scene. So I'm going to just begin gathering objects, and I don't know when I start what I want to work with. I might want to do something that's all in the same family of colors. I might want to have something that is really harmonious and keeps that whole focus on the differences between those shapes and colors. Or I might feel compelled to kind of move into a more diverse direction where I'm bringing in lots of different elements of color as well as form, where I have verticals and I have low, round, spherical forms. Sometimes the color is distracting and takes your mind off of the concept of composing something. So going back to thinking about the arrangement of shapes in relation to these spaces, I might put things together in such a way to create a line where I have objects kind of marching in a row together. Boom, boom, boom. And that can feel pleasing, or it might feel really static. Composing the painting is actually a lot like painting the painting. You're just looking and responding to these juxtapositions of color and form. And this is actually beginning to feel kind of pleasing to me. The blue, the yellow, the white, the neutral ground, it's beginning to kind of hum. And I feel the need to simplify. So I'm taking away some of these things. And I might simply have something like the glass cobalt vase and the lemon, and take away the other cobalt jug. So this would be a potential quiet but not boring juxtaposition. We have height, we have a relationship between this object and this object creating an angle. This is an undrawn line in your painting that exists between this object and that. So this diagonal is implicit, would be implicit in the painting. The vertical coming up of the sides of the body, the roundness, the top of this lemon creates another imaginary line that kind of goes across. So as you're playing, there's what you see, but there are also the unseen relationships between things that really become integral to your actual painting. And when we compose on the canvas, those pieces of information that maybe sound a little crazy right now become really clear. What do you need to do for this assignment? Well, first off, you're going to grid off 4 rectangles on charcoal on newsprint using charcoal. You're going to look at the scene from 4 different points of view. What you're looking at is creating some contrast. You're creating for yourself some variety, looking at the scene from an angle so that you can explore the composition of not just the objects themselves, but the planes that they're sitting on, the background, the foreground, the middle ground, the side. Then look at it again, this time head on. When you're working with just 2 things, those objects within a space, the space itself becomes even more important. I'm very attracted to working head on. And I think the reason for that is you have all these strong horizontal lines that become part of the story that create a very grounded, settled feeling, which is appealing to me. And that's a very personal thing. So that's kind of what you're looking for. Composition has a lot of rules. Don't put something in the center of the picture plane. Don't put something at the edge of the picture plane. But really, what it is playing and listening to your own response to the experiments you make. If it makes you uneasy, try something different. If it's boring, try something different. So it's just playing around. So that's what you're doing in this exercise. You're giving yourself 4 playgrounds in which to look and observe. You're not fussing the drawing, but you are paying attention to the relationships. Using Vine charcoal is so nice because, if you want to change a line, you simply smudge it away. If you want to work in your mass in your shadows and get those forms established, you can create a nice, dense shadow shape very easily and correct it with the movement of your thumb or finger. What you want to pay attention to when you're composing is the relative space, the relative height of the objects, how close they are to one another, how much space there is below them, above them, the distance that they exist from the edge of things. Those are just relationships that you're exploring, and as I'm exploring this exercise, I'm finding that I'm wanting more airspace. I'm wanting more above. So that's another takeaway is by the time I've gotten to the, or you have gotten to the 3rd experiment, you may be deciding, this is beginning to feel more interesting to me. And I usually give myself one more perspective. I've got an angle, I've got a head on, I'm playing with an expanded airspace. Now I'm looking at the objects standing up, looking down on them, and that's giving me a lot more middle ground. And that's another perspective to play with. Some of my students actually do a lot of work from standing up, looking straight down at the floor, and that aerial perspective that is really unusual and fun, and that may be another way to go. So looking at these objects again and again, composing different versions of what will end up becoming your painting, you begin to get a sense of what works for you, what's going to register for you. By the time you get to the painting of the scene, I think you'll find it's much easier. Your sense of how to draw the objects, your sense of how much space above or below, your sense of which angles give you more dynamic energy or more grounded energy will be clearer. Okay, so composing is like playing. You're playing around with a lot of ideas, you're changing elements, you're changing objects, you're changing lines, you're experimenting, you make plenty of failures. But that's really the beauty of putting energy into this part of the process where you're looking at the elements, the background, the foreground, the platform for the objects themselves. You're listening to how the objects are speaking to one another in terms of height, in terms of the lines they create when they're arranged, in terms of their colors. All of it is a dialogue. And when you're listening, you can hear when it's working. So I recommend that you spend a lot of time making studies like these where you are attempting differences. You're moving from looking from the left, looking from the right, looking head on, looking from above, and there's a moment when it kind of lands, and that's when you move back to your easel and begin the painting.